Well, welcome. In today's session, I am going to focus on women. I'm going to provide my recommended list of tenets for modern dating. Let me start by saying this. From a man's perspective, the purpose for dating, the reason we go on dates, is for sex. We go on dates simply as a way of auditioning for the opportunity for sex. Now, dating equals war. Think about it from the perspective of love and war. And that means that all is fair in love and war. Sex is war. It's a zero-sum game in the dating scene. The person who gives the least and gets the most wins. Ladies, to start, you're judged primarily based on your beauty. From a dating perspective, men are visual. We don't care about your views on philosophy and psychology and sociology and politics, etc. What we care about is how attractive you are. At first glance, we are drawn to you based on your beauty, your youth, and your physical attributes. And that simply means the more attractive a woman is, the more she's able to attract any caliber of men. In many ways, you're trading your looks, your beauty, in exchange for whatever the man can offer. In many ways, resources. Now, this simply means that a woman is judged by the quality of man she can attract during the early stages of dating. But for those who want to go beyond dating, you're judged by the quality of man you can keep. The more you can attract men on the higher social hierarchy first, and then, and by social hierarchy, I'm referring to money, power, fame, influence, and then all the other physical attributes of beauty and aesthetics and character. But the first things first, during the dating scene, it's all about who can attract the most person, the best qualified person. Now, what this simply means, being a zero-sum game, is that men are looking to pay the least amount, but to get the most amount of sex. That's the man's game. And the woman plays the opposite game. You want to give the least amount of sex for the most amount of resources. Now, let me put that aside and let me go through some tenets, some rules. Number one, and I should say this before I elaborate, that I will not expand on these ideas in today's session. My focus is to give you simply the principles, the guiding principles. Number one, do not get married before age 27. How have I come up with that number? Well, it's fairly simple. In prior sessions, I've separated the groups or the stages of a woman's maturity in the sexual marketplace. It begins from age 18 and it goes up to age 35. That's when the woman is at her sexual peak. The reason I said do not get married before age 27 is for the following reasons. Marriage limits you. There is a trade-off, and sometimes the trade-off is not considered. Between age 18 and 22, you have 5 years. That is the time for you to go to college, graduate. You have an extra year to travel the world. From 23 to 27, you have 5 additional years. Now, in those 5 years, there are 2,000 working hours in a year, which technically means you get 10,000 hours to develop your gift, your craft. The focus between age 18 and age 27, which is 10 years, should be about you becoming your best self, developing your dreams, your goals, your vision, your education, your career, building a financial fortress. In other words, becoming your best version of yourself before a man comes into your life, because men are distractions. So the first rule is do not get married until 27. Now I should rephrase that slightly. Do not consider marriage until 27. My recommendation is for you to start considering marriage from 27 onwards, because that would give you 5 years, 23 years, up until age 27, to actually become exceptionally gifted, skilled at one thing. That follows the 10,000 hour rule. Now, what this means is that by the time you start considering marriage, you become exceptional at something. Your identity is not linked to a man, or to your role as a mother, to your role as a wife, to your role in the family, whether that be an extended family or your immediate family. You need to give yourself time to develop yourself, to try things, to fail, to explore life, to sow your wild oats, to date several men, to get an understanding about who you are, what you like, what you dislike, what makes you cry, what makes you happy, what makes you sad. To learn to live with yourself. Rule 1. Now, rule 2, do not move in with a man before age 27. Now, obviously, this follows from the first rule. And this simply means from age 18 until 27, 10 years, you should live alone. When you live with other people, there should be non-sexual, intimate relationships. You can live in a hall of residence, you can live with flatmates, you can live with friends, but do not move in with a man before age 27. The reason? You want to focus on yourself, because relationships, as nice as they are, like a drug taken too soon, can be abusive. They can be misused. They can become abnormally used. They can limit you. Now this connects to rule number 3. Very, very important. Do not, for whatever reason, get pregnant before age 27. Motherhood has its blessings. It has its gifts. It has its joyful moments. But let's make no mistake, motherhood is not easy. Most people give up on their dreams as soon as they become mothers. And sadly, most mothers do not choose to become mothers at the point in time when they are aware of their motherhood. When people have sex, it's seldom with the intention of getting pregnant and having a baby. Most of the time, it happens by mistake. So do not, and here's an extension to that rule, do not have sex without protection. You should be on birth control between 18 and 27, always, without exception. You should spend some time studying the various forms of birth control. Do not rely on the man's wise words, foolish words, charming words about using a condom or being able to pull out at the last minute. The reason being, the woman pays the highest price for pregnancy. The man can get you pregnant and he can move away and start his life again, or he can continue his life, and all he has to do is pay child support. But you get stuck with, I would say, the errors of your ways, And if you keep the child, that derails you from your vision. So we've talked about rule 1, don't get married before 27. Number 2, don't move in with a man before 27. Number 3, do not, no matter what, consider sex without protection. And therefore do not get pregnant before 27. You must recognize that the time period between 18 and 27 is perhaps the most fertile of your entire life. And by fertile, I'm not referring to from the position of conception. I'm talking about from the position of your youth, your beauty, your intelligence, the seeds you have to sow in order to have a harvest later on in your life. So keep that date. Now let me connect the 3 of them so you can understand that there are some who might be thinking, then how do I start a family? Well, I'll share some thoughts very briefly for those who perhaps really want to have a family. The point I'm making is, all things remaining equal, 28 is really the perfect time for you to get married and start a family. Especially if you're career driven. Your goal is to become the best version of yourself. So it's important to keep your focus on you. In many ways, what I'm trying to get you to consider is to delay responsibility. Put yourself first. Achieve something in life. Because relationships, and men specifically, are dream killers. We make promises that we cannot keep. We often make promises that we know nothing about. Do not rely on the words of a man at the early stage. The younger you are, the more vulnerable you are. The younger you are, the more you have to increase the protection you have around yourself, your guard. Now let me move to number 5. Again, forgive me if I've mixed up the numbers. Between age 18 and 27, 95% of your time should be focused on yourself. Education, work, career, dreams, goals, ambitions, aspirations. Try, fail, explore life, sow your wild oats, date, travel, live life. And that simply means the remaining 5% of your time is what you dedicate towards men. Now let me break this down slightly further. There are 24 hours every day, 8 hours for sleep. That means you have 16 hours that we call the waking day. Assuming you work or you school or you study, you have 16 hours every day. 16 hours across the whole week. And all I'm saying is you need 5% of that time that you dedicate towards men. That amounts to roughly 2.5 hours per week. That's the maximum. And that simply means you keep your relationships very casual. You date, but you don't have to be sexually active with everyone. But the key thing is you be and remain emotionally unavailable. 5% of your time for and towards dating. The rest of your time, you must dedicate that time towards yourself. Now let's say you've gotten to the age 26, 27 and you're considering, you have someone in your life. Here are some rules. Moving in with someone is simply a pre-qualification for marriage or for long-term cohabitation, and to see if you can be partners, to see if you can stand each other for more than 2 or 3 days. But there is a condition for moving in with someone. The marriage has to have been discussed, a date has to have been set, an engagement has to be on the table. That should be taking place within 6 months. The highest honor a woman gives a man is her body. The second that comes with her body is her womb. When you move in with a man, you're in principle saying, I've accepted you as a long-term partner. I'm dedicating my life and my presence to you. 6 months is the maximum that you should tolerate. 12 months is understandable. But long-term relationships of 2 years and 3 years should be out of the question. And this brings me to another point. Let's call that number 6. You should not be in a mono relationship before age 27. You should not be in an exclusive, committed, loving relationship, before age 27. Because you should be emotionally unavailable. Relationships are distractions. They have their benefits. But focus on number 1. Focus on you first. And once you've achieved your 10,000 hours of practice, once you've achieved a level of professional development, you've moved up in your career and you're happy, then you can start considering marriage. Now, these are 6 principles, guiding principles that you should have at the back of your mind. Now, let me expand on those by moving into the dating environment a little bit further. I said at the start that the purpose of dating, the reason for dating for a man, is sex. We take you out on a date as an audition process. We want to present ourselves to you to see if you will accept, whether you would accept our proposal. Sometimes it's unspoken, but our proposal for sex. And this simply means the rule number 7, don't accept dates from people you are not attracted to physically. And this simply means that if you're one of those who you believe that you would like to get to know someone first, then there should be some rules. One rule is, do not let a man pay for a date more than once if you have no intentions of moving forward sexually with that man. The first date, he can pay, no problem. My preference is you pay half, go Dutch. Now this contradicts something I'm about to say next, which has to do with getting the most resources and giving out the least amount of sexual favors. The purpose of going Dutch is simply to indicate that maybe I like you, but I'd like to get to know you a little bit further. So I like to delay the sexual process, and in order for you not to feel, this being the man, that you're taking advantage of his resources, you can say, I'll pay for half. Or better still, just avoid dates. Do other things. Go to the museum, go for a walk, go to a free show. Do things that do not require his resources other than his time. A date from a man is simply an exchange. I pay for your time, you pay for my time. I pay for the meal with the intention being that I'm actually, effectively it's a bribe. I'm putting a down payment, hoping that I can, with enough alcohol, food, nice experiences and funny jokes and humor and my presence, woo you into accepting sex from me. That's the whole purpose from a man's perspective. As a woman, you have to understand the game and know how to play the game. Now, let me go back to what I said I would contradict. You're exchanging your beauty for resources, whether that resources be time, money, things, commodities, investments, accessories. You define what you want. You want to get as much as you can, but you want to give out as little as possible in terms of your body and your affection and your presence. Now, how you achieve this, whilst the man is doing the opposite, is where the art of deceit comes into dating. You've heard me say dating is an art of deceit, which is why I call it war. One person wins. The person who gives out the least but gains the most wins. There will always be a victim and a victor, but both of you are volunteers. It's like a gladiator sport. Now, let me move back to the dating process so you can understand the importance of knowing how to be on guard. What this follows up, or what this means, is that for a woman, when you go out on dates, there should be an intention. Now, let me expand on this slightly so you can understand how men think. Before the creation of social media, we had to go out on dates because that was the only way that we could present ourselves to you, the woman. Today, we have in many ways deregulated the sexual marketplace. We have things such as Tinder and Bumble, online dating apps, some of which give the woman the first pass on whether she accepts the man's interest. And what that simply means is today, I can put all the information you need online, photographs, a bio that explains who I am, what I do, what I want. And if we match, if I swipe left or swipe right, and I match with you, that means I have had the opportunity to see your profile. You have had the opportunity to see my profile. If we match and there is a date, online dating unfortunately has erased the concept of the first and the second date, because traditionally you had the first date, the introduction, you had the second date to see if there's chemistry, you had the third date to consummate the union, which is why most guys would say, I expect, if I'm paying, I expect by the third date to get sex. Social media and internet dating apps have eliminated the first two stages. For the reason being, you've seen my profile, you've seen me, we've matched, we have communicated, sometimes we have spoken. So if we go out on a date, the man is of the option and of the opinion that you have already emotionally accepted his proposal. Now, if you haven't, you need to make this very clear. Again, this is where it contradicts the point I made about obtaining as much resources as you can, but giving out as little as you can. Although there is a contradiction, they're not mutually exclusive, because you can be honest. You can be honest in such a way, the more attractive you are, the more men are willing to lavish resources on you. Now, I should say this, and this is a deviation from the rules, but I think this will serve some purpose. It's not a nice thing to say, but I think it's worth keeping in mind. From age 15, 16, a woman starts to blossom. Men start to look at the woman as an emerging woman. She's still a teenager, but men start to look at her as though she's emerging. 16, 17, she's blossoming. 18, she's an adult. From 15, 16, even before that, a woman's beauty can be used to trade for whatever she wants. And therefore, a woman should always, especially if you are attractive, and if you have a lot of suitors and men who are all over you, you should endeavor to obtain as much resources as you can. But here is my recommendation. Keep in mind, beauty fades. And once you turn 18, every year, there is a new 18-year-old that is born. Between 18 and 35, that's your sexual peak. That sexual peak, in many ways, starts to decline from 18 onwards. So you want to obtain as much resources. And my preference is this. Forget about asking for bags and shoes and food and restaurants and accessories. It's all rubbish. In 20 years, that'll be gone. Think about your beauty as an asset. Think about how you can trade your beauty and your presence in exchange for another form of asset. In this case, cash, stocks, bonds, real estate. If you can get men to buy you things, the whole concept of gold digger is used in the wrong way. Yes, you should be a gold digger. Between 18 and 35, you should obtain as much resources, assets from men, as much as you can. Rather than say, I'd like you to take me out for dinner or buy me a purse, have him deposit that money in your account. Let him buy you a share in the company. Let him buy you a stock. Let him buy you a bond. Let him buy you, put a down payment for a house and let the house be in your name. Forget about cars. These are liabilities. Invest the money in assets. Assets that appreciate over time, so that between 18 and 35, you maximize what you collect as gifts from men, so that over time they appreciate in value. So when it gets to 35, when your beauty is not what it used to be, you still have what you exchange your beauty for. You should not be exchanging your beauty for blowjobs and 2-minute quickie sessions and sex and sexual favors. No, you exchange your beauty for something tangible, something that you can see. Not cars, not jewelry, not jewelry. Let me say that again. Not jewelry, not bags, not items, not commodities, assets, cash, stocks or equities, bonds, properties, cryptocurrencies. Just get them to buy you things, anything on that list, and you just keep storing it and saving it. In exchange, you give the least amount of sexual favors as possible. You obtain the most amount of resources that you can. The second thing you want that is non-tangible is connection. You want people who are connected, whether through power, money, fame, resources. Because the more people you can associate with within the higher social class, the more it exposes you to more opportunities. Your role should be getting yourself into the inner circle of the powerful, the influential, the wealthy, and those who have resources. Stop chasing around and letting yourself be chased around by men who have nothing to offer you other than their penis. Quite frankly, that does nothing. You have a lifetime to have as much penis as you want. At the early stage, you want access, because your beauty will fade. And before he trades you in for another model, make sure you get as much as you can before it is too late. Now, these are some ideas. They're not exhaustive, they're not all encompassing, but I think they provide a framework, something that you can consider, something you can think about in your life as you journey through life, and as you grow into your womanhood. And let me perhaps close with a few other things. Let's call this number 8 or number 9. Who cares anyway? Do not date single fathers. Let me say that again. Do not date single fathers. The younger you are, especially women between 18 and 27, even if you were to meet a guy who is extremely special, but is a single father, keep it casual. Don't date them, because he has made a mistake for whatever reason. You should not take on the responsibility for another woman's mistake or for his mistake, because what tends to happen, women become nurturers, and they take on the role as stepmothers. Don't raise another person's bastard. If you're going to pay the price of motherhood, let it be yours. If you decide to deviate from that framework, make sure you're at least 28. You've achieved your dreams. You've achieved your goals. You should never give up your goals for someone else's child. Even if you decide to adopt, you wait until you're 28. When you've achieved your goals, you've achieved your dreams. It doesn't matter how great he is. It doesn't matter how loving he is. You deserve the best. Now, that is not to suggest that he might not be the best. The point being, put yourself first. Now, I hope that has been useful. There are a few others that I can share, but I think perhaps this is a good place to bring today's session to a close. Now, keep in mind, with ladies, you matter. You pay a higher penalty and a price for making the wrong decisions early in your life. Men age like fine wine. Unfortunately, women age like cheese. You want to make the decisions early correctly, because men have more time to correct the mistakes from their past.